So thank you very much, Mr. Satyarthi, for meeting with us today. My name is Sigrid Lupiri, and I'm from the UNESCO's Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. As you may know, UNESCO MGIEP is UNESCO's first Category 1 institute in the Asia-Pacific region, and we're working on changing education systems to create more peaceful and sustainable societies. So for my first question, I just wanted to start out with asking you a little bit about your background and what compelled you to make such a radical career change from an engineer to campaigning for children's rights.
Thank you very much, first of all, and welcome you. The very first day of my schooling was a spark to understand this issue of children who are out of school and children who are enslaved and working as child laborers. I saw a boy of my age sitting outside the school. He was a cobbler, and when I was entering the very first day, I encountered with him, and I could not understand why he's sitting outside and all of us are going to school with new uniforms, new books and new dreams and aspirations. I asked my teachers, my headmaster, my family members. Everybody had replied, oh, they are poor children and that's why they are not in school. One day I gathered all my courage and went straight to the father of the boy, who was also working and sitting alongside the boy. I was 5 or 6 years old, and so was the boy. And I asked his father that, sir, why don't you send your son to school? So he looked at me as it was such a tough question. Then he replied, Babuji. Babuji means sir, because of the caste system. He said to me that, I've never thought about it. My father, my grandfather and I started working since childhood, and so is my son. So nothing is special in it. But then he told me that, sir, perhaps you don't know that we are born to work. So that was his reply, but for me it was a question which I still trying to find out the answer for. Why some people are born to work? Why some children are born to work at the cost of their schooling and childhood and freedom? And why we are born with dreams and future? Then I started involving myself in trying to find not only answers through my friends and relatives, but also some solutions. I started gathering old books, used books, and helping the children because their textbooks were very expensive, so I wanted to help them out so that the dropout could be minimized. I started collecting some money to give the fee for those children because tuition fees was essential those days. So that slowly and gradually built up my mind that I am not born to become an engineer, or I am not going to enjoy a very usual career. I will do something else for those children. It was very tough because I come from a modest family. My father was a simple police constable. My mother was illiterate and widow, but she was very determined that all her children must go to school, including her daughter. So that has inspired me to finish my studies, and then I worked as an electrical engineer for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. But finally I gave up my career. That was too difficult because most of my friends told that you have become crazy, this is, what are you talking about? But it worked well.
Looking back over your career, what would you say have been the biggest challenges you have faced in campaigning for children's rights?
My first challenge was to establish that child labor is denial of human dignity and freedom, denial of education. It is not just poverty. So establishing the fact that this is an evil, this is a crime, was the biggest challenge for many, many years in the beginning because nobody was working on this issue. India did not have its own law by that time. There was no single piece of research, nothing, no knowledge about it to learn from in my country. So it was very hard to establish this fact and then to challenge it. So it started from neglect and then denial and then reaction, sometimes the violent reaction from the employers and some mafia groups. Financial problem was a serious problem. So the fight against mindset has been the biggest obstacle, and it still goes on. To convince the people that every single child is born with certain human rights, and some of those rights are natural, given by the God. A right to learn is a birthright of every child. Every child is born with a right to learn, and that means education. So if anything is against it, we have to fight it out. But I lost two of my colleagues. One was shot dead, one was beaten to death. I have been attacked many times. I have my broken leg and my broken shoulder. My backbone is broken. So there are many injuries and scars and wounds on my body. But every time when such criminal and the mafia groups attacked me or my colleagues, I gathered more strength, because I was convinced that I am on right path. So it was a long fight, and it will be a long fight. It's not so easy to change the world so easily.
How has winning the recent Nobel Prize affected the nature of your work?
It is the greatest recognition to the most vulnerable, most negligible, neglected, most I would say deprived children all across the world, and that has brought spotlight on these issues, the Nobel Peace Prize. So we are able to bring this whole discourse to next level, to higher level, or perhaps the highest level. On one hand, the common people started thinking about this issue, which was not there. So awareness is growing. But on the other hand, the discourse has also reached to the level of presidents and prime ministers and UN agencies heads and so on. So I am sure that it has helped a lot, and it will help much more.
You have said in the past that you think that it will be possible to eradicate child labor soon. Do you think that the UN's new targets, the Sustainable Development Goals, will be able to achieve this target?
I just don't say it, that eradication of child labor, educating every single child, giving childhood back, is not a dream only. It is something which is achievable, which is attainable, and we can attain in our lifetime. And I'm going to see it with my own eyes. So I'm very, very convinced about it. It is not just an optimism, but that is true, because the indicators are there. The number of child laborers have gone down in last 15 years from almost 260 million to 168 million. The number of out-of-school children has also been dropped from say 130 million to 58 million or so. So these are strong indicators, clear indicators. Sustainable development goals are much better formulated than Millennium Development Goals. Of course, the international community has gained a lot of experience and learning from the successes and failures both. Education, for instance, is figuring out much well the inclusion, equity, equality. These issues are going in right direction, and we are considering more and more education with right perspectives. So that is important. Similarly, on child labor, forced labor, there is very clear and good language about it. And the interconnectivities with the rest of the development and human right discourses is much more better reflected in Sustainable Development Goals, the draft at least. So let us see that how the international community agrees upon most of those things.
And what do you think are the strengths and the weaknesses of the Sustainable Development Goals in regards to children's rights and education?
I still see a big lacuna about addressing the problem of child slaves. The number of child laborers, as I said, has gone down, but the number of child slaves globally is stable. It is stagnated. according to ILO itself, 5.5 million children are the victims of child forced labor or child slavery. And that number, in my opinion, has gone up. It did not go down. And if we keep on ignoring this, I would say the most heinous crime against human civilization, child slavery, then we are not going to achieve many of those things, to call ourselves more developed and advanced and educated and civilized, cultured. So child slavery must have no place in our society, and that is not mentioned at all. So I have been in contact with several governments, but also with UN Secretary General, and he in principle agreed that it would be incorporated. So we want a very clear and explicit language for abolition of child slavery in the development agenda, and we cannot simply ignore it. So that's one. And the second thing is that however, there is different places where the interconnectivity could be interpreted in such a way, but it would be better that we should have more clear indication that how we can go for more coordinated approach in dealing with the issues of children. Like violence against children is there, child labor is there, forced labor is there, education is there. So how these goals, which are affecting the lives of hundreds of millions of children in the coming 15 years, could be seen and could be addressed in more holistic manner, in most coordinated manner.
Do you think education is enough to end child labor? And if not, what do you think needs to change in current education systems in order to achieve this goal?
Of course, education is a cornerstone. Education is a cross-cutting issue for most of the development goals. Child labor is definitely one of them. We cannot think of eradication of child labor without ensuring good quality, free education as a fundamental human right for every single child. That is very clear, because education is a preventive tool as well as the rehabilitative measure on child labor issues. But it cannot work alone, let me tell you. The enforcement is one part. So the government should enact good laws and enforce them with the priority and urgency and professionalism. So enforcement is one part. Another important area is the corporate social responsibility. In the globalized world, the economies are being more depending on the corporate sector, and the corporate sector is depending much more on the supply chain and value chain and the production chain. So how to ensure that no child is involved as child laborer in any of those production activities or supply chains, that has to be ascertained. That cannot come only through education. So we have to work on several aspects: enforcement, education, and corporate responsibility to address the problem of child labor, beside many other things.
What do you think can be done to better incorporate children's voices into policy-making processes around the world today?
Well, this is an agreed principle that the children themselves should be given platforms and voices for their own issues. Child participation is one of the core principles of UNCRC. So we have to devise methods. For instance, how we can involve the civil society organizations who are directly working with the children, child centers, child-related activities, where they can try to work with the children and get their voices incorporated. So that's one way. We can involve teachers also worldwide. So through the teachers organizations and teachers associations, the voices of children and their own demands and their aspirations for the future development could be gathered through them. Then communities, there are community institutions where the child participation could be ascertained in gathering the voices of children and feed them to the development agenda. So through various institutional framework which are available, because the time is very short, and in such cases we have to use the existing institutional frameworks rather than creating new ones, which is very, very difficult. There are some youth organizations globally. They should also be contacted. The student unions are there in high schools and in adolescent places, so they could also be contacted. So these are some ways where we can bring the voices of children.
And as a final question, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give young people today who want to pursue a career as social activists and who want to make an impact upon the world?
Well, this is an area where a lot of genuine and urgent attention has to be given. What I see worldwide, which I also mentioned in my Nobel acceptance speech, that I have a fear which I foresee in the coming many years, coming 10-20 years, that the intolerance and impatience among young people is growing very fast. It is widening and it's deepening. They don't want to listen, they want to react first. Also because of the growing ethnical and communal sentiments, the young people are reacting quickly about it. They are not so tolerant. What we have seen after the so-called Arab Spring in most of those countries, the young people are not really satisfied. One reason I think that we as global community have not been able to ascertain the security of their future and career. Secondly, we also fail to inculcate the values of global citizenship among young people. The values of non-violence, the values of peace, they are lacking among young people because systematic and deliberate efforts have not been made. Investment has not been made towards that direction, and that's why I am a big supporter of your institute, which is trying to inculcate those values among young people, and that is very, very needed, very timely to address this problem. But we have to find more innovative ways that how we can involve the young people. I would say that in spite of all these intolerance and the violent attitude which is growing fast, most of the young people still are very idealistic. They are really looking for a better life for themselves and better life for the community and the world. We have to identify those people. We should give them voices, the voices of non-violence and for peace, voices for global citizenship. We have to build leadership among them and try to give them the driving seat, and they should become their own pioneers and leaders and champions for the cause. So involvement of young people for the betterment of the world, for a non-violent and peaceful world, is a challenge, but it is also an opportunity. We should work on it all together. Of course, for young people, sometimes I am saying in last few conferences in other places that we have already gone into the age of 3D. We wanted to see our televisions, 3D televisions, even our smartphones are going to be converted into 3D telephones so that we can shake hands without coming close. We can see all angles of things around us through 3D. So my 3D suggestion for young people is, first D is dream. Dream for big, dream for better. Dream for betterment of yourself and dream for betterment of the whole world, for the whole humanity. So dream is one D. The second D is discover. Every young person has tremendous potential inside her or him. It has to be discovered, it has to be explored. The idealism is a big spark, it's a big energy. Anger is a big energy. Let us transform that spark and anger for the betterment of society. So discover the inner strength and discover the opportunities from outside. So this second thing is discovered. And the third important thing is do. Even if you dream and discover, and if you don't do, then it won't work. So don't be lazy. Act now in what you believe. If you have big dream, act now. Discover your strength and power. Use your power, use your dream to do as soon as possible. The time is running out. We have to do it now.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful interview and for your time. And we hope to be seeing you soon someday at UNESCO MGIEP.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.